today. So it's companies are not just looking, customers are not just looking at the cost of the product. They are looking at the value that they are buying. They are looking at what they are, through buying this product, what is the kind of impact, that what is the kind of footprint that they are themselves creating on the environment and the society. So also purpose programs create business value for organizations by enhancing their reputation. It is considered as the best PR tool ever. And we have seen purpose programs speak for themselves. You know, you do not have to, organizations do not have to pay media to talk about their purpose programs. Media picks it up and talks about it. I have had this personal experience as well, wherein I was completely taken aback when a brand like Times of India reaches out to me to understand what the work that we have done in water space. And we have not reached out to Times of India for it. And they are the ones who are coming to us. So that's the kind of, if you are doing genuine work on ground, it will get recognized. And your company will be known for it for a very, very long time. Now, leaders are judged by how they manage and grow their businesses at the crossroads of sustainability. Sustainability doesn't come at a very low cost. A lot of times, at least, if you take a short-term view. So, you may have to put that very expensive machine to reduce the water, that you may be using in your factory, or you may have to reduce your carbon footprint by putting a more efficient electricity. You may have to invest in solar power you'll be able to come back to a break-even point only after 5-6 years, despite renewable energy becoming far cheaper these days. But when you make those investments, and when leaders make those investments from the long-term sustainability point of view, it is also that's something that gets completely recognized, and how it benefits in the long run in the business is what can get captured in a longer period of time than in the immediate visible period. So also 87% of companies under the ambit of CSR bill, which is being passed in India in 2014, are 90% compliant. Now, if you know this, there is no penalty. There are no such clauses for not being able to fulfill your CSR commitment. You are just supposed to write a couple of lines in your report saying, I couldn't fulfill my CSR obligations because of so and so and so reasons. But, in a country like ours, where a lot of smaller companies are seen to want to take shortcuts by trying to cut short of all the difficult environmental guidelines, here you see a lot of companies complying to it, not for fear of any reprimand, but because they have themselves over the years, first couple of years, they reluctantly adopted it. Then they, slowly started getting benefit of how this entire thing brings back to their business from the community point of view, from the regulatory point of view. And therefore, it is the compliance is increasingly rising year after year. I want to touch upon a little bit about circular economy, because I started my discussion with the whole piece of how we have become consumeristic. And since we want to consume more and more, we also need to register that there are finite resources on this earth, and we should be able to work in a circular economy instead of a linear economy that we have been working for so many decades now. And only in the last decade or so, we have started looking at the circular economy piece, wherein everything that goes into production comes back after reuse, repair, recycle back into the production cycle, and we reduce the waste that we are generating out of it. Circular economy is an economic model that attempts to decouple economic activity from the consumption of finite resources. Now, when I say this, I mean, earlier, if you would have a conversation with anyone 8-10 years back, I would still say, an environmentalist was always against the economy. An environmentalist was someone who, if he is speaking, he'll be speaking against the economy. If an economist will always speak against the environment, because these two cannot work hand in hand. But that's not the truth. the fact is that if we work together, and we all have to work together, because neither can we do without the environment in good shape, nor are we being able to do without the economy. So we have to keep the products and materials in use. We have to design out waste and pollution, and we have to regenerate our natural resources, which are basically the 3 principles of circular economy. And all of us as individuals and as industries can contribute into it. I mean, we can go into agriculture also, and how they could come back and use less resources. But currently we should be speaking only about industries and individuals. If I am a pro-circular economy person, I'm supposed to have a sustainable lifestyle. Do I contribute to circular economy at an individual level? I can ask myself some quick questions and get an answer to that. Do I buy anything secondhand? Do I buy, say, a house, a car? Clothing is a little far-fetched. In India, people don't buy clothing secondhand, but a house that is second. We have a lot of inventory in our country, which is lying. The houses that are built, you'll all see, in whichever cities you are operating from, that a lot of houses have been built and they are just there. Nobody is living in those, and then more houses are being created. People are buying multiple houses. People who can afford it are going on buying houses. All these house construction requires a lot of material. So we all need to, despite having our money and all of that, we should register that we are taking away resources from where it is required from. It is certainly coming from some place to be used in this construction of this particular house. Smaller things like compost food waste instead of throwing it into a bin. Use a car or bike rental scheme rather than buy. This is an interesting thing that I have seen majorly amongst youngsters. Also, there are options of taking Uber and Ola was just not there when we were in college. It's just started happening now. But I see a lot of my colleagues' children who are much older now, that they do not want to own cars themselves. And I think that's a fantastic thing, because we are all using, going to be, and it's not that it's going to impact the economy direly, like some politician commented that, that way, since since Uber and Ola is there and millennials have stopped using cars and therefore the automobile industry is dying. No, there are always alternate models that come up in a situation like this. So certainly that's something that's extremely appreciable, what the younger generation is doing these days. Use that shirt or dress a few more times. All of us have in our cupboards, I'm sure, multiple clothes. But again, there are so many options available. Even in COVID times when we are sitting at home getting bored, let's take a break from work and then we go into Amazon, Flipkart, buy some things for ourselves. The whole urge of being able to control ourselves to buy that new thing, that's contribution to circular economy. Use all the sheets in the notebook. That I specifically like to say to all the children that I meet, because a lot of our privileged children do not realize the value of the kind of resources that are going into making each of those notebooks. Taking your own bag for shopping, very, very simple. A lot of us have started doing it, at least in the cities where not many people are giving you bags for free. So Bangalore, I have seen this happening in a big way, which is extremely nice because it's required. It's high time we did it. I have a little video to play for you, which will give you a little better understanding of what circular economy is.
Moving towards a circular economy, the ways in which companies have so far ensured profit are no longer enough to guarantee future success. However, change always creates new opportunities. All we need to do is use circular economy business models. Luckily, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Trading used products, for example, is a form of circular economy, as by doing so, we extend the life of the product. One man's trash is another man's treasure. Sometimes old products need to be repaired before they can be resold. Indeed, the circular economy benefits companies that provide repair, upgrade, and maintenance services. New products should also be made durable, serviceable, and upgradable. After purchasing or renting an item, customers can enjoy the repair and upgrade services provided by the seller. In this way, customer relationships become more durable and customers are not immediately distracted by competitors' products. At the end of the rental period, the returned products may be resold or rented. Sharing is one aspect of the circular economy. It increases the number of times a single item can be used. Repairable and upgradable products last longer and allow businesses to rent the same item for longer than normal. A business idea for a company can therefore be renting products instead of selling them. We all own items that we seldom use ourselves. Such items or even premises may be rented to others through digital services. The service provider can then collect a service charge from its users. That is how sharing creates business. A circular economy is only possible when products are durable, repairable, and upgradable. Such products can be used for a longer time than their originally intended purposes, and also as many times as possible.
Okay, coming back to the circular economy piece, companies and circular economy and how companies could contribute to it is very unfortunate that while some industries are circular, the stark reality is that only 9% of materials are reused. The WBCSD, which is the Council for Sustainable Development, has identified key materials that comprise 20% of greenhouse gases, 95% of water use, and 88% of land use. So reducing use of raw materials by sourcing second-hand alternatives from what is today classified as waste could have dramatically positive impact on all three of these critical environmental priorities. There are a whole lot of businesses who create a lot of plastic waste, taking it back, finding a mechanism for taking it back and recycling and reusing it without also reduces costs for a lot of companies, and the companies who have registered the kind of impact that it has on their bottom line, both from the economic and environmental perspectives, have already started adopting it and working towards it in a big way. There are two dimensions to the purpose program usually for an organization. The first and foremost is responsible business, and the second part of it is social responsibility. Responsible business is doing business responsibly, like a good corporate citizen. I mean, you cannot have any social responsibility before being responsible yourself. So you need to look at what is your environmental impact, whether you are water neutral or not, the kind of water that you are taking out from the natural resources, whether you are able to give it back to the groundwater or not, whether you're using renewable energy or not, how much of the grid electricity are you using, and measuring, first of all, measuring that, and then trying to reduce it as far as possible and going to solar energy kind of sources, compliance and ethical issues, basic premises for a company to run. And then comes the social responsibility, where the focal point is the community. So here you do programs which are basically looking at the community as the center point. We have examples of some of these projects that we run ourselves, and the names are Mission Pani. There's one program called World Toilet College, and we have done a whole lot of product donations for COVID-19 relief. It is also very relevant for us as a business because we are a hygiene and sanitation company. So, what could be more relevant than giving our own products in the COVID-19 crisis? So we have done that. I'll take you through a little bit more in detail in what we do as RB. So the purpose of our company, as stated, you'll find this everywhere on our websites and all the communication that we produce, is to protect, heal, and nurture in the relentless pursuit of a cleaner, healthier world. Now, all our products and all our programs and initiatives are always, linked to this purpose, and we do not do anything beyond this particular purpose of ours. Before we get into the specifics of what we do in our purpose program, I quickly want to take you through the UN adoption of sustainable development goals in 2015. Now, each of the corporates under their purpose programs would be working on one or two of these sustainable development goals more directly, but the impact that they have on several sustainable development goals is sometimes not very direct upfront to the eye, but it is all extremely linked. For example, if we work on clean water and sanitation, which is the space that we largely operate in, we have a large impact on good health and well-being too, because it's the basic premise of health. Hygiene and sanitation, clean water is the basic premise of good health. You cannot have it without that in place. Quality education. We see a lot of times children spending their school hours trying to collect water for their families in water scarce regions. That they're losing. The opportunity cost is losing out on education. Getting water or not, using sanitation, unhygienic sanitary conditions can bring about a huge gender equality issue, because we have seen a lot of crime that gets reported pretty much every day in our newspapers on when women go out for open defecation, or women when they are walking miles together for getting water for their family. A lot of opportunities are lost from them. They have a whole lot of impact happening on them. I mean, more specifically, the kind of SDGs our products align with is good health and well-being. So our products like Lysol, Dettol, Mortein align with this this sustainable development goal, and all our programs are also linked to this particular goal. And with Lysol and Dettol across the world, we work on quality education issues, working with schools, talking about hand hygiene, about keeping surfaces clean, and so on. And then with Harpic on clean water and sanitation, again, very logically linked to the way Harpic is positioned. We have a Leaders for Change program. It is our internal volunteer program, which allows every employee an opportunity to work for 2 days on causes that they feel passionate about, and also possibilities of going into longer term assignments based on causes wherein they could use their business skills and experiences to bring change to the community. These are some of our purpose programs, and some of them are fairly well known. We have something called Dettol, Harpic, Paniga Swachh India, which has driven behavior change towards hand hygiene and improved sanitation facilities over the last 4 years now. We have a Nutrition India program, which aims to transform the nutritional status of children and reduce childhood wasting. There's a very interesting sexual health program linked to our brand Durex, which is for the school children, wherein, we all know that young adolescent children are very curious about sexual and reproductive health. And it has worked on creating lucid curriculums, and through comic books, it's explained as to how the entire thing works in their bodies, and they are extremely feel very confident about themselves. And in adolescence, we see a lot of children withdrawing into their own selves because of their confusion about their growth and how things are working in their life. So this program addresses that. We work with LGBTQ community with our brand Durex, also because they are one of the most vulnerable communities, and they have very poor visibility despite having very large numbers. I'm very proud to say that I work in a company wherein this community has been given equal opportunity. We have quite a few people in our workforce who are from this community, and they are stronger together because they know that, there's nothing to be quiet and silent about it, that they have a right to be where they are. Then we have this very interesting program, and I am personally very passionate about the Harpic World Toilet College, which has been set up to upskill sanitation workers, promote entrepreneurship and access to better jobs in sanitation. Now, if you see, sanitation workers, or manual scavengers as they were called earlier, are a very distressed lot. They have actually no health facilities that are given to them. We often read newspaper reports of people dying when they've entered the manhole because they have stepped in without personal protective equipments and the right safety measures. So here is our attempt to be of help to the sanitation workers who have such a very direct link to this product of ours called Harpic. We have a large initiative called Harpic Mission Pani, which is a solution-oriented partnership with India's largest TV network called Network 18. And we are trying to raise awareness and mobilize action towards water conservation and improvement of hygiene and sanitation. Now, if hygiene is such a big topic today, you know, washing hands is very important. Can you wash your hands without water? I mean, yes, you can argue that you can use sanitizers, but that has been proven over and over again to not be as effective as washing your hands. And also, if we are careless about using a very large amount of water while washing our hands, we will have less water for our more underprivileged brothers and sisters of our countrymen. So we have some on-ground projects also on water conservation, behavior change communication on the water sanitation and hygiene aspect with non-profit partners in Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. And we have a very interesting project called Open Defecation Free ++. Now, open defecation free is something that everybody understands, not going out in the open to defecate. But this is ++ because here we are talking of strengthening capacities of local bodies for fecal sludge and septage management. So we are working with the municipal bodies to make sure, again, that the sanitation workers get the right kind of capacities to handle the fecal sludge and manage septage more safely, and it doesn't have a lot of negative impact on their health. And by doing a larger level of sewage and septage management, it'll have better impacts on our health as well, our people who live in those cities, our health as well, because all the untreated sewage lands in our waterways, and all our waterways are linked to all our lives, which we cannot deny about at all. Finally, I'll talk a little bit about the donation that we did of 1 million liters of Lysol and Harpic across government hospitals in the country. And we have seen, you know, we all know that majority of our people, and also in the COVID context, a lot of private hospitals who are otherwise, you know, where people like us, the middle and the upper middle class goes for our treatments, have refused, people have let them down to enter those hospitals. And in those times, the government frontline workers were the ones who were continuing to serve and really made the difference in the entire COVID situation. So, and our effort has been to associate with these hospitals and make sure that the patients feel more comfortable knowing that these established brands are being used to disinfect and clean those hospitals. I know, you know, 1 million liters or 10 lakh liters won't be enough for all of India's hospitals, but we can only do our bit, and we tried that. And we are extremely happy with this intervention of ours. Talking a little bit about purpose in an employee life cycle. Now, employees, you cannot have a purpose of the company which is not with the employees, because the employees are the ones that are going to work towards your ultimate purpose of making a cleaner, healthier world. It's not without your employees that you can achieve that target. So we are working very closely with our employees in partnership with them. And it's also about leveraging all the resources. There's a lot of knowledge, inherent knowledge that at times is within our employees, and we only know a certain part of them because they are working on that particular area in your organization. That's what they have been interviewed for. But these opportunities bring about that side of them that has probably not been seen by the organization earlier. Of course, as we all know, when we have our career goals and we have money and all of that in place, there comes a need for self-actualization, wherein we all want to contribute something to the society that we all live in. And here it becomes increasingly important. And I've seen, you know, some of successful corporate people who have decided to quit their hardcore corporate careers and move into the non-profit sector to make that difference. If you're getting that sort of an opportunity within your organization, that becomes like a retention tool in a deeply stressed environment that most corporates have in today's time. And I've been told by Ankita that there are a lot of people that join Shenzhen's webinars who are from startups. I only understand, I've never worked in a startup, not been fortunate enough, but I know quite a few people who have worked in startups and tell me the kind of pressures that they undergo. And it could be, that little effort with the employees and working with them on purpose can bring that about, the caring aspect of the organization to them on ground. Of course, creating a positive aspect on positive impact on ground gives you another level of happiness that no amount of product sales can ever give you, despite that is what your company typically runs on. But when you do, I've seen people being very enthralled about how excited they get when they get to contribute something in the lives of the community. You all know that millennials are pretty much working everywhere now in significant roles, and Gen Z is entering the job market. And as a consumer, the millennials and after them, all the youngsters choose brands very differently. It is very different from what it was 20 years ago, where we had limited choice of brands. Now they look at what these brands have been doing, the kind of advertising these brands are engaged into. Can the brands afford to be misogynistic in their approach? Can they promote gender stereotypes? Can they, do body shaming? Can they talk about fairness? And many, many things like that have made a whole lot of large conglomerates bend to this new idea of looking at a more sensitive advertising, of placing a brand far better with the purpose ideas rather than with any ideas that will be socially discriminating and would be making a world a rather difficult place to live in for some who do not fit into the ideals of the world, so to say. Even LGBTQ for communities for that matter, not so much in India because we do not talk very openly about it, but in US and UK, Europe, you will very commonly see that they're avoiding any sort of advertising, even jokingly, at any of these communities. There, then, as an employee or a job seeker, people are looking at ethics, culture, diversity, responsibility, all of that in an organization. The organization culture has to be promoting equal opportunity in the first place. Diversity has to be beyond gender and look at physical disability and, different sexual preferences and also, race, different races, different backgrounds. So millennials are basically looking for companies to give back to the society by getting involved, be transparent about their socially good efforts, and give millennials the opportunities to get involved with the company's efforts. And you have to be agile and future ready for millennials by doing all of that. Employer branding, very, very important in today's time to attract the best talent. We know we have a lot of people in this country, but we always have this conversation about, but the people skilled for my job are very few and I'm having difficulty in finding the right candidate. And for finding that right candidate, I think my employer branding should be good. So go green, water neutral, carbon neutral, fair trade, all this are no longer optional, I would say. They have not just remained labels. You have to do all of this together to make sure that you become an attractive employer. And with that, I end my presentation, and I hope I have not taken too long. Please, you may open the session for questions.
Thank you so much, Tushara, for such an informative session and so many things to take from this and actually start thinking about this. As Tushara mentioned, audience, we are opening the session for question answers. In case you have any questions, anything that you want to ask, clarify, please go ahead and use the chat box. So as you mentioned, Tushara, before people start asking, I wanted to ask one question about this entire millennials and Gen Zs are actually starting with their startups. And previously we have seen that organizations need to reach at one level to kind of start contributing to the social good, or giving back to the society by creating some initiatives. But I think the time has come where even the young businesses can implement social good policies along with their profitability, and both the goals can go hand in hand. So if millennials or the younger generation want to start something in their organization from day one, is there like a checklist, or is there a few initiatives that people can run with in their organization? It can be like a 10 people organization or 20 also, but for us also it's very much applicable.
Sure. Ankita, that's, we all think that it's larger organizations, and you would think that I represent a organization which has 45,000 employees. So it's a huge organization that I work for.
Right.
But yes, and we have larger budgets to be able to do our social responsibility work. But what I would say, it doesn't take a lot of money to run a purpose program, and it doesn't have to be a really large scale one at that. So you can look at, and when it comes to particularly keeping your employees engaged and that aspect of it, and making sure that also that their stress levels are low, so to say, you can build it into your organization's culture to do some sort of engagement with the community, or go for smaller plantation drives. Look at, when you do say a group outing for you, I mean, that's like just a suggestion that comes to my mind, that when you do a team outing for your people, you could look at an ecotourism destination wherein people could also get to work with the community. There are a lot of such team tourism coming up, in which people get to interact with the other part of the world. Sometimes what happens with young people, they do not understand the realities of the true India, and for any business to be successful, you need to understand your own region, your own country, and how people operate, how people live. Your country is not exactly the MG Road of Bangalore. Your country is what resides in the rural areas. Still, say over 60% of our population lives in rural areas, and even in cities, a whole much larger population lives in slums and smaller areas. So just getting that whole idea, I think, doesn't only help them in building social consciousness, which is extremely important for each individual, I would say, but also helps in thinking of business from that perspective. That this is every business has a goal to expand, and then if I have to look at my own small bubble, that doesn't work.
Right. Thank you so much, Tushara. Okay, I don't see any questions here so far. Audience, in case you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. We have next 5 minutes in which we can answer a few questions. So Tushara, you mentioned something about how the entire CSR policies in the organizations is not very strict in terms of, as you mentioned, you can just write in the report that, you could not fulfill the commitment that you were required to fulfill. So I don't think it's a very ideal way, like, for the organizations who are not taking initiatives. Maybe these policies are in a way pushing them to do some work alongside their main business goals. So what are the ways in which maybe the policies can be a little stricter, or for organizations to start working, do they always need to have this push coming from the government? Like, how is it working? Like, because if organizations are not working because the rules are not stricter, then maybe the policies have to be changed accordingly. So is there any plan, or what is happening?
No, certainly the policy, when I say of an organization, is usually created by its own people, right?
Right.
It is taken, the board gives an approval on it, and a lot of times, Ankita, it's the board's seriousness in the entire effort that makes all the difference. The government has mandated, and there was a lot of There are a lot of people who spoke against it. There's no, government cannot add an additional tax on it. This is like a tax. We're already paying all sorts of taxes and it's just not fair, etc. But, we have organizations like the Tatas in this country for many years. They didn't require any CSR bill to create solid infrastructure in this country. I mean, I am a product of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. They gave that institution to this country, and many said there's Indian Institute of Science in your own city, and there is Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and they are like really established bodies, and they do huge amount of academic work for our country to progress. And I think that didn't require, so it comes from within, I strongly believe. And Tatas are such a strong company. We all know this today, right? They all of us respect Tatas for what they have been, and there has been no company like that in my mind. I mean, people would say ITC is a competitor for us for many products, but it's a great company, and you must appreciate the kind of work that they are doing. There's an e-Chopal program through which, it's a business thing for them. They work with farmers very, very closely, make sure that they get all sorts of agricultural technical inputs, and make sure that their agriculture is more remunerative. So it's a win-win situation for both the company and the farmer. They work for making their agarbattis. They work with self-help group women. Mangaldeep Agarbatti is a established brand now. So there are so many initiatives that you respect, and then you kind of forget that at the heart of ITC was someday tobacco, and tobacco kind of affects your health so badly, and they still have a lot of revenues coming from there. Right. So, that's the kind of, when you do good social efforts, where, your image, your reputation gets guided from, I would say.
Correct.
You're like a chairperson of ITC speaking, you will see in his entire speech, at least 30 minutes would be about the purpose programs that they run, and so much lesser about the business, because that, he says, you can read out of the annual reports, the sheets that we maintain.
Right. Okay, I have one last question that I want to ask you. So I come from communication background, and I've seen that, there are many agencies who are, specifically looking for brands who are doing social related work, and they kind of create campaigns. So there are special advertising agencies who are only looking for, like a Lifebuoy campaign that you see from Ogilvy. Like, when they actually put that stamp on the roti where they were giving in Kumbh Mela. So, very interesting campaigns is what these agencies are coming up with. So, someone who is working in the industry for such a long time, how do you see a future for these kind of agencies? Like, is the demand going to increase? Or because there are a lot of corporates who are having their internal communication team as well. So there are agencies versus the internal communication teams who are working towards the same purpose. But in that particular scenario, what is the role of the socially focused communication agencies? What is their future according to you?
Okay, now I'm going to be making a statement which is not very politically correct, but let me anyway make it, because I am a more straightforward person. If you know, and yes, there are corporate communications team, the marketing teams working also on brand communication, everything. But if you know how corporates work, you would realize, Ankita, that they only give suggestions and ideas. The actual work is always done by agencies. So agencies with this kind of an orientation, and the ones who are being able to look at what is it going to be, there is how the kind of potential that this market, the new brand purpose oriented, cause marketing or purpose market, then I'm 100% sure that if you build a niche in that direction, you certainly gain in future, particularly with the companies who are just about adopting
purpose. Okay. So unfortunately, we are running out of time. So I want to thank you, Tushara. Thank you so much for taking out time and having such a good dialogue with all of us. For someone like our organization, also it's like an eye-opening thing that at what our capacity, what can we do? And I'm sure many from the audiences also have felt the same thing. Thank you so much for that. Audience, thank you so much for attending today's session. As I mentioned earlier, the webinar series is ongoing and we have a couple of interesting webinars coming in the near future as well. So I encourage you all to go through our website, go through our social media channels and register for the future webinars as well. Thank you so much all. Tushara, any last words before we close in for today?
No, thank you so much for listening in. I hope you have no questions because I have been able to talk about the different aspects, and I hope
sure
I've not bored you or anything. It has been great. I really enjoyed making this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tushara. Thank you, audience. Good evening. Thank you.